Okay, so I want to finish, well, maybe not finish, but continue to talk about His Holiness, like I was invited to by the Russians. So, uh, they asked about my impression of him on the first meeting, which I talked about last time. But I want to share some other impressions that I've had and things that he has said and done that have made a very strong impact on me. So one is that throughout the years, and I've been going to his teachings, since the 70s, is regarding the Tibetan situation, he says, do not be angry at the Chinese. Do not hate them. So here are the Chinese communists have, done environmental destruction in Tibet. They've had a kind of genocide. They've occupied what is not their own land. And yet His Holiness says, do not be angry at them. And he means it. Yeah. And in the whole way he's handling this on the world stage, he does not do it with anger. Yeah. He does it with ethical conduct and with compassion and simply with stating what is more beneficial for everybody concerned. Okay. So he's not yelling and screaming and accusing and anything like that. And that, to me, has really set him apart from other world leaders in quite a strong way. You don't see that quality in other leaders. Also, then later on, after some years, a few years ago, there started being some Tibetans who self-immolated. And one of them was a Tibetan living in India. He went down to Delhi, and in the middle of Delhi, he set himself on fire, again, calling for Tibetan freedom. And the Dalai Lama, it was a difficult position because everybody was looking at him as a martyr. I don't think His Holiness really approved of that. But what he told the Tibetans about this man was, it's better, we honor him for what he did, but the rest of you, it's better if you live for Tibet rather than die for Tibet. And again, that made a strong impact, that if you believe in something very seriously, you need to live for it. Yeah, and try and make it happen rather than die for it. Okay, so that's another thing. That made a strong impression. Also in, I think it was 1993, we had a meeting of Western Buddhist teachers with His Holiness, and to discuss things that had come up with teaching Dharma in the West. And there's too many points to go through all of them in this. Some of them are in Volume 5 in Praise of Great Compassion. And you can also get the videos from Meridian Trust, thank you. Yeah, who they filmed the whole thing. But what really impressed me is how practical he is. And there was so much confusion, and still is a lot of confusion in many parts of the West in terms of how to relate to a spiritual mentor. And this whole thing of the guru is Buddha and everything the guru does is perfect, and you can't point anything out, otherwise you're breaking your samaya, and that is a quick ticket to the hell realms for a long time. And that's what many people have been taught. And His Holiness would just clarify the whole thing in such a practical manner. This is in Volume 2 in Foundation of Buddhist Practice. And he said that that kind of teaching is for people who are taking tantric empowerment, especially highest class tantra. And he said, but it is, if you just teach it generally, it can be like poison. It can poison the teacher and make them feel that they're entitled and spoil them. And it can really obscure the disciples' minds so that they get very, very confused. And, and so he said, when there's abuse, you put it in the newspaper. And that really shocked me. But he said, I teach the Dharma, and these people come to my teachings. And if they don't listen to the teachings I give, calling them out by name individually is not going to have any impact. If you publicize it in the newspaper, maybe, they'll think about it again. Because His Holiness gets asked a lot, why don't you, when there's the latest scandal, why don't you talk about this specific person and, say what they did was wrong and da-da-da-da. That is not the Tibetan way. Their culture does not call people out individually in a public situation. And that would be very difficult for him because he's also trying to keep harmony between all the Buddhist traditions. And if he called out one person from one part, one of the four Tibetan traditions, and not people from the other ones because he didn't hear about them or they didn't do anything, then that would create a lot of division. Oh, His Holiness is against that tradition. He's siding with this one, this kind of talk. And so that's why he doesn't do anything publicly with people's names. He does talk about the behavior and calls that out, okay? But he doesn't like to do it with names. And when you're in a position like his, you can see why that might just create more useless gossip and division and so on. Okay, so yeah. He also at that time spoke about the Sangha. We had a morning panel about the Sangha and the fact that many people were being ordained without enough preparation, without enough screening, that after they were ordained, Westerners that is, they were just thrown out there. They have to support themselves. Many people were quite lost, and what started out with people having very sincere good motivations ended with some of them disrobing. And His Holiness was he really understood the question, the issue quite well. And he said, don't wait for us Tibetans to do something to help you. You go improve the situation for the Westerners. If you have trouble, come talk to us. Yeah. So that's what some of us have done. And when we were planning the Life as a Western Buddhist Nun in 1996, we had invited some Tibetan masters to come and give talks. Some of them accepted, and some of them were too busy, and we had the feeling that they, yeah. So we mentioned that to the private office, and the office spoke to those people, and then they accepted our invitations. Yeah, so what His Holiness said, brought fruit. When we went to start the Abbey, I'm just trying to give you some examples of how practical he is. And these are examples that I've experienced myself. That's why I'm talking about them. So when I discussed with him about starting the Abbey, and at that point I was thinking of doing it together with a Theravada monk. And His Holiness gave really good advice. He said, discuss everything for a long time, discuss it completely, and write down your conclusions. Yeah, so that everything is written down and you know what you agreed on. So what it really emphasized to me is whenever you're doing something important, keep a written record of what you've done, and don't make impetuous decisions and just think, oh, this sounds really good, let's go do it. But really think about it and discuss it with other people and write it down, have some written things. And so that was the bigger message in all of this. And so I've tried to do that in different projects I've worked on. And it's very good advice. Yeah, and so those of you who, sometimes work with the county or the water, the health department, I'm always telling you, save the emails, ask the questions in an email, keep the written record. Yeah, make sure you have something that shows the agreement. So this all came from His Holiness. Yeah. Okay. So those are some of the qualities that he has that really inspire me. I was talking before about how he sees everybody as his friend, yeah, and just goes in and greets everybody like a friend. And he greets everybody without any kind of pretension. He doesn't go in, kind of, I'm the Dalai Lama, bow down. And if you don't bow, he's not like that at all. He's totally approachable and informal. Okay. The office makes certain things have to be formal. Okay. But that's their job from His Holiness's side. He's quite approachable. Although I've had some funny situations. One time, I was bringing a group from a retreat. I had led a retreat at Tushita, and so it was customary we would ask for an interview with His Holiness at the end. So we were coming in, and because I was leading the retreat, I walked in first and offered a kata, and then they pointed me. There was usually some chairs and a sofa and another chair up here, and they said, go sit here. And then there were many people, so move down further, go down further. And so, I did that and I sat down, and then His Holiness came and he said, oh, I think that's my seat. Because it was, all in a row. And they said, go down to the end. So I did, and so I was so embarrassed, but we had a very good laugh about that. Okay. Okay, and then another question they asked me to talk about was, what is the Dalai Lama's mission in the world for Buddhists and for people in general on the planet, for all sentient beings? I think there's a few of them. First of all, interreligious dialogue, interreligious harmony is something very important to him and very dear to his heart. And not only between Buddhism and other religions, but also within the different Buddhist traditions, because he said that he often has had more dialogues with Christians and Jews and Muslims and Hindus than he has with people in other Buddhist traditions. And he really would like the Buddhists themselves to have more connection and be able to speak in one united voice about certain world issues that are important in the world. Okay, so interreligious and also intra-Buddhist. He also, of course, feels very responsible for the situation to help in Tibet and to do whatever he can to ameliorate what the Tibetans in Tibet are going through, and to help the Tibetans who are now in exile. you know, how many years have gone by? You know, 60 years, 61 years now? If the Chinese Communist government were smart, they would negotiate with the Tibetans while His Holiness was still alive. Yeah, because His Holiness has stopped calling for independence, and instead he's calling for autonomy. In other words, for the Tibetans to be able to govern themselves within a broader China. Yeah. And if they were smart, they would negotiate with him, because the Tibetans themselves, they don't want autonomy, they want independence. And when His Holiness is not here, it's going to be a totally different ballgame, because you're going to have the young people who are very adamant and with strong feelings about regaining their country. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't think that the Beijing government is listening to my 2 cents, but it would really be better for them to negotiate while His Holiness is here. He's also interested in science and very open-minded, and he likes talking about how different things that scientists are discovering correspond with different Buddhist principles. And he's also very interested in making what he calls Buddhist science available to people in the West. And so there's been a whole series of books that have come out, because His Holiness, let's see if I can remember this. He talks about Buddhism. There's Buddhist science, and there's Buddhism as a religion. Yeah. And he says Buddhist science, everybody can learn. And Buddhist religion, that is our stuff. Other people don't need to do that. But he's very interested in people learning, let's say, about the Madhyamaka view or the Yogacarya view, or, this kind of dialogue between the ancient traditions and the contemporary science. And he's even gone so far in his relation with the Indians in not just saying Buddhist science, but ancient Indian scriptures, and bringing all the Indians into that, which is very good, because they are refugees in India, and to acknowledge the importance of ancient Indian culture is I think, very wise and very important. He's also interested in education. It's really been very touching for me to see him talk to the, on the things he's been doing online during COVID, when there's young Tibetans there, or the young people from Mongolia or from Ladakh. And the way he talks to the young people, and it's just with so much love, and it's just like he's trying to pour his wisdom into the next generation and trying to pour his compassion into them. And, he really cares about education of the young people. And so much so that, they now have C-learning. What is social, emotional, ethical learning. It's a big program at Emory University. There's another program at Stanford. So these kinds of things, really trying to get Buddhist approaches and values into the secular education system. And similarly, secular ethics, really pushing that so that ethics doesn't have to be something religious. It can be just part of human nature to be kind and, and to be harmonious. He's also very much now talking about climate change and global warming. That's a big concern of his. So he's not just somebody who's a Buddhist. His mind is very, very vast in terms of really reaching out on social issues, scientific issues, climate issues to benefit everybody.